Council back in session. Number 4 under unfinished business is discussion of game and fish feedback, reference to deer hunt. Motion to discuss. Motion made. Seconded. Discussion.
Second.
Okay. Motion made, seconded. Discussion. I'll start it. In reference to the survey I was to inquire with Game and Fish about, they sent a note back from Mr. Dick Baxter, who's the Assistant Deer Program Coordinator. And I'll read this into the record. It says, Mr. Pate, first, does everybody have a copy of this? You should have. Okay. We have conducted spotlight surveys for some municipalities in the past. However, most people do not realize that a density estimate derived from a night or two of spotlight surveys may not be accurate. There are several variables, weather, traffic, moon phase, time of year, number of repetitions, etc., that influence deer movement, and these factors could provide spotlight surveyors with inaccuracies. We have tried to explain to municipalities in the past that it does not matter where the deer density is if it has exceeded the cultural carrying capacity. The Arkansas Game and Fish Commission cannot determine what the cultural carrying capacity is by conducting spotlight surveys, thermal imagery surveys, trail camera surveys, etc. If the majority of the people there think there are too many deer, there are too many deer. And there is nothing to do with biological carrying capacity, which is what biologists are concerned with. It is my understanding that the concerned citizens have voted to have an urban hunt, so many of the residents believe the deer density has exceeded the cultural carrying capacity. Urban hunts we have helped implement in other municipalities have been largely successful because in each town there has been a large amount of common land owned by the municipality that bow hunters could access. If the perceived problem area is within the city and the city owns little area in this land, there may be a real issue with hunter accessibility. If hunters cannot access the problem area, your deer issues will not be alleviated. Urban hunts are a cost-effective and safe method of stabilizing deer population growth. However, they only work when the problem area can be accessed by bow hunters. Other population control methods exist, but they are more costly. One way to address the issue of access is to ask if landowners are willing to allow hunters to access their property. If the folks who own the majority of the property where the perceived problem is are opposed to hunting, the likelihood of successful urban hunt is low. I hope this helps, and please do not hesitate to call or email Dick Baxter, Assistant Deer Program Coordinator. Questions? Comments? Mr. Pano?
I remember back when the other council was sitting at the table, and I believe my esteemed across from me pointed out that let's let the deer feeding ordinance take effect. Do we have any idea if the same problems still exist as it did? And I mean, I realize that the voters said they want a bow hunt, but it was my understanding, and I don't see it in the ordinance, that it was strictly going to be on public property.
Yes, sir. I believe that's what it says.
It does not say. It says would be in according to regulations and times set. It doesn't say anything about locations, but he did address for it to be successful to be on private property, and I don't think that was what was voted on.
Well, we have a map of all the public properties.
We have 93 properties.
And they're small or very populated.
Which means you could hunt for deer on Plainer Hill, parking lot,
Just drive your car down
Park
to there.
Spring, Lake Leatherwood.
So that's what the Game and Fish guy said. Mr. Berry?
Well, in answer to Mr. Pennell's question, the deer in my backyard, the last week that I counted, were up to 18.
Quit feeding them.
18. They get into my garden, my yard, jumping over my fence, jumping down over the retaining walls, jumping from my neighbor's retaining walls, eating, minor $15, $25 pasta plants in a night. The dogs, I'm liable to get cited for a nuisance dog barking ordinance because of the dogs barking when they go out. So I think there's still a problem there. I think the vote may have been, the vote that came before the public may have been for public property, but I would think that the people who voted for hunting would also go for private property if they have the room. I think the problem is having enough room. Mr. Morris, Mayor Morris, is probably one of the few at this table that realizes that up until 96, you could legally hunt inside the city limits with a gun or bow. And at that time, because of circumstances, there was a city council member who passed and got the ordinance banning all hunting at that time. And that's where we are now. So a lot of people don't realize that up until, like I said, 1996, you could legally hunt in the city limits. And people did without any, I don't know if there was any complaints or not. I never saw anything in the paper if there were.
Most of the time it wasn't during the day.
Yeah, that's probably true. Well, and a lot of times it's early in the morning and late in the afternoon. But, my brother has approximately 40 acres up above and circles magnetic around underneath the Passion Play. So, I mean, he certainly has property up there. He actually hunts on the adjoining 40 acres and has been known to carry deer down through and across city property into the city. But the deer that he killed were outside the city. So there's also, and I don't know how many other people have property that's available to be hunting on. So, I think there is that opportunity there. And I think we still do have a serious problem with deer hunting. With deer. And I don't think so far the banning of feeding the deer has had any effect, because then they go straight to the roses, the azaleas, the hydrangeas, the hostas that a lot of people like to plant or can't plant, and because of HDC have a problem with putting up fences too. So it's a catch-22. So I'm not sure exactly where. Heber Springs that has the urban hunt, how much municipal property they have down there. I know it's mostly
their parks are bigger than our whole city. Yeah.
Beg pardon?
Some of their parks are bigger than our whole city.
Yeah. So, I think it's a matter of looking and seeing how, I guess grabbing an ordinance from another city and seeing how they're handling it.
Ms. Alexander?
I was speaking with a friend of mine who lives in Texas, and he is hired by the Texas Game and Fish, and what he does is do urban hunts for the state, and they hire him to go into certain urban areas, and that's just what he does for a living. And so he stakes out private property and such, contacts the local inhabitants and gets, signed whatever waivers, and they know. And he's hunting not just deer, but whatever. They have a lot of wild boar and such also. But it's not an open hunt for hunters. It's done primarily by professional, state licensed, employed game and fish hunters. I'm not sure if that's the direction that we would go, or if we would be licensing just, whoever wanted to hunt.
Mr. DeVito?
Well, through the Game and Fish, there'd be a proficiency level that anybody participating would have to pass qualifications. I think at this point, although I'm not in favor of a hunt, but we do have to respond to the request from the citizenry of the community, that we would put out a request for response from private property owners to see if they are interested in allowing hunts on their property, so that we know. I mean, if we don't have anybody that's willing to allow hunting on their property, then it becomes a moot point. I mean, as per the Game and Fish findings, as we knew going into this, there's very little publicly owned property in the city that would be advantageous to control the deer herds. But put out a request through the citizen, or if we have to take out an ad in the paper to request private property owners to notify the city if they're willing to participate, I'd say that'd be the next move.
Doc?
I agree with Mr. DeVito 100%. Also, if a private property owner wants to have a hunt on their property, I think the officers, the policemen, should check it out and see if they feel it's safe first.
You could do a survey of the property.
Yeah. Yes. They just walk around and look there, our boys know what's going on. I think then they can sign a waiver. It's your property, you want to protect your property, and the deer are not doing that for us. And they're dangerous.
Mr. Penny?
I hear what the good doctor's saying, but that isn't what was called for in the election ordinance. It's got to be under the auspices of Arkansas Game and Fish. And we did have on the books, as Mr. Berry alluded to, there is a no bow hunting ordinance that has gotten repealed because of this, if I understand correctly, with the one-time request. I agree with what has been said, that if we cannot get the private property owners to pony up and become part of the group under the auspices of the Arkansas Game and Fish, what's our position with something that the city has voted that we can't and have been told that is not going to be successful?
The ordinance is passed and, as was referred to the voters, allows them, doesn't require one. But and if you don't have land to safely do it, I don't think the Game and Fish is going to come in and sanction a hunt. And it requires that you do it under the auspice of the Game and Fish. And they're basically sounding to me like in their correspondence with the mayor saying, you better have enough sufficient land or forget it.
Mr. Penny?
I just feel uncomfortable, all due consideration, calling up the police department, asking them if I can go hunt on my 3/4 acres and shoot the deer that are down in the valley. I don't think that's the intent of the ordinance, to put that burden on the police department.
What was passed by the voters would not allow that.
Any further discussion?
Do we need a motion to make a request to the public for permission?
I believe the gentleman at the far end of the table down here could take care of that without a motion.
Well,
Unless you just want to make a motion, have it in the record that a motion.
I would make a motion that we pay for an ad in the paper. No offense to the citizen, but it's not their responsibility to notify the public of this. It may appear a couple of lines in an article.
I would suggest you designate a person to receive those correspondence.
It's in the mayor's office.
So just like a public notice that we, I'd make a motion that we put a public notice in the citizen to request participation from private citizens to allow hunting on their property.